I did forgive her. And I also really came to the realization that, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. That statement is so, so true. Even if you look at it from the standpoint of consciousness, if your brain waves are vibrating at a low rate that is allowing you to perceive at a baseline level of consciousness, you're not going to understand necessarily what you're doing, especially if you're in active addiction. You're thinking, when am I going to get my next drink? You're not thinking, what are the consequences of my actions and how am I being selfish and self-centered? You're just thinking about the carrot on the stick. But when you raise the rate of vibration of your brainwaves and you expand your consciousness, then you can see, oh, these people are running around on programs. They're programmed and they're conditioned by their traumas and what happened to them. And so that allowed me to have compassion for her.
Welcome to a Broaderlands podcast. The opinions expressed on Broaderlands podcasts are those of the guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or Broaderlands podcast.
The Broaderlands podcast, it's an honor and privilege.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, and I look forward to hearing your message because it's powerful. The power of storytelling. Do you feel that's important for any of us in our life?
I do, because we are either telling our stories, it seems like, and sharing our truth, or adopting a storyline that may or may not resonate with our innermost truth.
Yeah, thank you. And you have a strong message. So and it takes a lot of courage to share this. So I honor and appreciate you. Thank you. Maybe you can introduce yourself and share a little bit about, who you are and what you do.
Okay, so my name's Sarah, and I'm an author. I wrote a book about my story, but really I'm just an average person. So I'm an average person that had something extreme happen to them. And I decided, once I had healed enough from it to be able to talk about it and share what happened, to start moving towards helping others come out of this slavery that I'm seeing is a lot more common than I had realized, even just a few years ago.
Yeah, thank you. And your book's called Alchemizing Exploitation, right?
Yes, Alchemizing Exploitation.
Yeah, thank you. And some of the statistics, I know we talked about that movie, Sound of Freedom, was shocking to me. I think the sex traffic industry is $150 billion per year. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the profit from human sex trafficking. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to come forward, and I really appreciate that. Was that hard for you to come forward at first?
It was. I had to overcome the fear of what people would think. Actually, my family didn't even know what happened until I wrote and published my book. I never told them. I didn't tell. I told maybe a few people that were really, really close to me, but for the most part, people had no idea.
Wow, that's been powerful. How'd that look like? I mean, there must have been a lot of shock and maybe healing, maybe for you. That must have been hard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just doing it and going through it, and I get more courageous every day, and I still don't really know what reactions I'm going to experience, but I think I'm strong enough at this point to be able to just follow my inner guidance and speak up about things.
Yeah, I'm pulling something out from your book you wrote, and I think it's pretty powerful. And it says, it's not easy to face our biggest fears and deepest pain head on, but I have to do it so fear and pain don't run my life. I didn't plan to have children, but they're a gift. Having them motivated me to seek wholeness. And I love that. It's very powerful. Sometimes in the 12-step rooms, you hear, you got to do it for you. You can't do it for anyone else. But you share, your children helped motivate you to seek wholeness. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, they're definitely the reason why I've come this far. I think when my daughter was born, my heart opened for the first time in my life. It was my first spiritual experience. And then when my son was born, I decided to not live in fear anymore. So both were really powerful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. We talked a little bit about, 12-step recovery, and sometimes in 12-step recovery, you hear what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I personally like to say what happened, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. Because I think that's a little bit more accurate, because we're skipping on what happened sometimes. But maybe if you don't mind, maybe you can touch on your story and share your story with us. You walk us a bit, starting with your upbringing.
Okay, sure. So I was born in San Francisco to a woman who had a really hard time in life. She grew up her whole life in the foster care system. And she had a lot of trauma from that. She was physically and sexually and mentally abused her whole life in these different homes. And so she had a lot of mental disorders and addiction issues. And because of that, she was looking for options when she was pregnant with me, whether she was going to get an abortion or have somebody adopt me. But I ended up being placed with a family that she established a relationship with. So I was fostered by them for 5 years until my adoption. And then I was adopted and we moved away and I lost contact with her. But I always wondered about her. We had exchanged letters for a while, so I had some letters. And when I was 18, I was actually able to locate her. And I went to see her because she lived pretty close to where I was living at the time. So I had a pretty good childhood. Of course, there were some things early on in those first 5 years that were not good. Mostly neglect, as you can imagine, with somebody going through that level of emotional and mental trauma and disability. And she also had seizures. So, but for the most part, I was safe and had food to eat and everything. The family that adopted me was very religious, and I had a lot of different experiences and a good education. And then when I reconnected with my biological mother at 18, I kind of wanted to let loose a little bit. I was a teenager. I wanted to have fun. And meeting this person who I wondered about my whole life, who was super open and let me do whatever I wanted and was fun, was like a chance for me to spread my wings and experience life and have fun and do what I wanted. But I don't know if my intuition was underdeveloped or just naive. So I would drink with her. We, over the course of a year, hung out more and more. And there were a lot of aspects that went into what happened. Like, for instance, our conversations over a cocktail or something would be about her life and what she went through. And she would tell me stories like, when I was a teenager, I went to New York and I was a prostitute and worked on the streets. And she told me a story of when she almost died because somebody held a knife to her throat. But she got out of the car and she ran away. And she said, but it wasn't so bad because I had like a lot of money in a safety deposit box, and it was really easy to get a lot of money really fast. She would talk about stuff like that. And then the drugs started being introduced. So she showed me how to smoke methamphetamines. And I tried that. And then she also put GHB in my drink. So I guess I was like payment for a steady supply of methamphetamines and cocaine for her from a group of people who were running a house that sold women. So I was there and I was used, like I was sex trafficked. I could say, there's no easy way to say that. But I was in and out of consciousness on various substances. Like, I don't even really know what all substances were in my system during that time. So for a period of months, I was in that situation. And then I gained consciousness enough to recognize my surroundings and get out of where I was. I was in a studio apartment with a man and a woman who were unconscious on the bed. And the front door was nailed shut from the inside with boards. So I had to like scramble around and quietly and find a way to get the boards off and get out. And I did do that. And then I was able to call somebody for help. And they helped me get into a safe house for women. And that program is still running in San Francisco right now. And it was an 18-month program. And I got to spend 6 months there. Yeah. So I thought, okay, I'm safe now. I'm physically safe and I'm out of that situation. But the slavery, the enslavement, it's not just physical, because the trauma of what happened acts as a form of enslavement, mental and emotional. So 6 months into this program, I was overcome with rage. And I didn't know what to do with the rage. It was completely consuming. So I left and I went back to sex work, and I made sure to drink alcohol or do cocaine every day while I was working to be able to work. And it was just this cycle of addiction that played out over the course of a decade. Sometimes I would take time off and get away from everything and try to regain some clarity. But it really wasn't until I kind of had a bottom. I lost my mind. I lost my sanity. I lost everything, And then just everything fell apart. I lost custody of my daughter because I got married at one point. And I guess it was good in a way, but it was not, I don't know how somebody makes a good choice, like who they're going to marry, or has a good marriage under those circumstances with all that unresolved mental and emotional trauma. So when I hit bottom and lost everything, I knew I was never going to abandon my daughter. That was not something I could ever do. So I made a decision to heal. And I just surrendered. I surrendered all my ideas. I admitted that I knew nothing and that I was completely powerless. And that was the start of healing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. The spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle says at the beginning of all addiction there is pain, and at the end of all addiction there is pain. Did you go through a lot of pain at the very end that helped wake you up. Like Carl Jung would say, there's no coming to consciousness without pain. That was my experience. I woke up after all the pain. It helped me wake me up and say, hey, I need change. I need help.
Yeah, I mean, there was that irrational dissatisfaction with every aspect of my life. I hated my apartment. I hated that I had to move where I was living to be close to my daughter. I hated my options. I hated myself. Just everything was, I didn't like the people around me. So there was that irritability. And then I had been, before I hit bottom, I'd been in a lot of pain and depression, but I was numb because I was taking antidepressants. So that kind of turned me into a zombie. And my moment of surrender came after, you know, I was just, I couldn't even function. I couldn't take care of my daughter. And when I made that decision, I decided I'm not ever going to take pharmaceutical drugs again either.
Yeah, thank you. I seen that you quoted Gabor Mate in your book, and it made me happy because he's a hero of mine, and I know you love him as well. And my next question is, you know, you got into addiction, you know, alcohol and drugs. Do you think trauma is a key component for you becoming an addict?
Yeah, because I wanted to avoid the pain. I didn't want to feel it. I don't want to feel anger or sadness.
Yeah, thank you. I always talk about the third step prayer in Alcoholics Anonymous. One of the lines in the third step prayer is relieve me from the bondage of self. And that's exactly what drugs or alcohol did for me. And it became addictive because it helped me leave this horrible reality, and it helped shift my consciousness for a brief moment and gave me some kind of relief, some soothing. So yeah, thank you.
It's interesting that you bring that prayer up, the third step prayer. You know, that I may bear witness of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. That's a prayer that I wrote down. You know, when I discovered psilocybin, this is a whole nother topic. But couple years into sobriety, I discovered psilocybin, which is the ingredient in magic mushrooms. And I had done a lot of research on it after some people told me it could probably really help with integrating and healing. And the whole thing was explained to me like, you need to set an intention for the journey that you're going to go on. So I had to have a goal in mind, and I wrote down the third step prayer. That was my intention for my first experience.
Yeah, thank you. And you talked about psychedelics, you know, magic mushrooms. Was that helpful for your healing process? Because a lot of times in the 12-step community, they may say, hey, you're not sober, you tried this, you tried that. But obviously the co-founder tried certain things in his journey in sobriety to heal his own. I believe he has childhood trauma. Well, I know he had childhood trauma. He had a lot of it. So I'm not going to say I believe. I know he had a lot of childhood trauma. And he went through different doors to try to help get rid of his depression and his suffering, even in sobriety. So do you think that's helpful? I know a lot of doctors like Gabor Mate even found results with, you know, ayahuasca, for an example. Treatment.
Yeah, in my experience, it is helpful. I mean, I think everybody needs to just make that decision for themselves, and not everybody will turn to psychedelics or plant medicine or something like that. It's just a individual case-by-case decision. But I'll say that before I went down that road, I had already decided certain things. And I think it's important to get to a certain point, for me at least it was, before going down that road, because it's going to magnify whatever decision you've already made. So I realized my thoughts are powerful. And I was choosing my thoughts wisely at that point as best I could. I had discovered the power of gratitude. Like, you know, even what happened to me, I was educated when it happened. I was living in a first world country, and I had a supportive community that I could ask for help. Those are things that not everybody has that has been through something similar. So I can be grateful for that and focus on the positive instead of being in that victim mentality, which it keeps me trapped. So I had this foundation that was really super helpful when I went on the journey. And when I did experience it, I decided I was going to do whatever it takes to have it be a positive experience. And I knew going into it that there was this term called the black mirror. I knew there was going to be a point where I had to decide to go into the pain and embrace it and work through it, or to avoid it. And I knew that it was dangerous to go into this and avoid it, because that might exacerbate some of the pathologies that were already kind of ingrained in my mind. And I knew that I wanted the neural connectivity, the healing of my brain. So I did hit the black mirror when I went into it. And I felt in one moment all the pain I had experienced like my whole life. In one moment, it was right there in front of me, and I felt it. I didn't back away from it. I dove into it, and I became it. And then when I became it, I could choose. So I was guided. So my guide at that time said, okay, now make a choice. You can make it go where you want it to go and turn it into what you want it to turn into. So I allowed it or willed it to just dissipate, and it just dissipated into nothingness. And then it was like the veil dropped. It was like something was lifted off of my shoulders. I was free. And then all of a sudden I felt the same thing that I felt the day that my daughter was born. Because the day that she was born, I saw the fabric of reality turn into living vibrations. And I felt so much love. It was like that portal over my heart or something opened up and allowed, I could feel love. Like it was just in the air. Like I could see it, I could touch it, I could feel it. And the same thing happened in this guided experience. And then I just had so many realizations about myself and the world and people. And it just jump-started so many things on every level of my being, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and biologically. Because after this one experience, all of a sudden, I knew what my body needed. I immediately stopped drinking tap water, which is something I never would have thought to do. But all of a sudden, I'm researching what's in everything I'm consuming. So like, oh, there's heavy metals in water. Well, how do I drink pure water? Buy a distiller. So I bought a distiller, distilled all my water. And over time, I would implement different things, like with how I was eating, supplements I was taking, my daily routine. And it was just like this domino effect that was kickstarted by that experience.
Thank you. You talked about tapping into your heart like a portal. Yeah, I totally can relate to that. So you also talk about finding like ancient wisdom in your experience. Like you said, you were raised a Christian, but you started to look into the Gnosticism and other teachings, esoteric teachings, and so on. And that's a no-no in Christianity. But how did that help you?
I know. After, I think it was either right before that experience or right after, I realized I'm allowed to read the Book of Enoch. I have wanted to read that book my whole life, and I'm going to read it. So I did. I read the Book of Enoch, and I was like, this was really good. I'm going to read some more of this stuff. And then I found a little book of Gnostic Gospels. They had like 5 of them in it. The Gospel of Thomas, the Pistis of Sophia, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Judas. And I read these texts, and I was like, what is this about your higher self? Like, if I meet my higher self, something magical happens and I'm with Christ and in heaven or something. Like, I got to meet my higher self. So it was like every epiphany I had from reading these things led me to my next goal and mission. And I was relentless in my pursuit of the truth until I found that piece of the puzzle.
I tapped into the Gnostic Gospels early on as well. It seems like that Rumi saying, what you're seeking is seeking you. And like, I didn't look for these Gospels. They just came to me, and they really helped me. You brought up the Gospel of Judas. I think that was found in 1978. It's been a while, but it's similar. It's in that time frame. But the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas really found me. And there's so many amazing sayings of Jesus, Yeshua in that book. But in one of them is kind of like what you remind me of, what you were talking about is blessed is he who comes into being before he comes into being. I'm like, whoa, yeah, that's powerful. That's not the Jesus I hear in the Bible. It's more empowering, more enlightening, and he's telling you to go within yourself, so I really love it. And the word Thomas means twin. Like, if you drink from his mouth and you become just like Yeshua, like, wow, he's showing me like a mere reflection of who I really am, helping me remember. So that's how that's my understanding of it.
That is so cool. I didn't know the etymology of Thomas. That's cool. And I'm glad you said that about to remember, because I've come to believe for myself that I'm here to remember. Like, the remembrance is what sets me free. I had to remember who I am and why I'm here. It's just, and then I forget sometimes until I remember again. And it's the moments of the remembrance that bring me clarity and peace and just keep me going.
Yeah, thank you. I think in a number of the texts, they talk about our forgetfulness, and which creates ignorance and evil in the Gnostic texts. So forgetting who, and that's what trauma does to us. Peter Levine says trauma is the loss of self. And I don't even know who I am anymore. And I put up all these personas for defense mechanisms, and I forget who I am. How does alchemy help you heal from trauma and find your own sovereignty or authenticity?
So alchemy traditionally is the study and the science of turning lead into gold. And I love that word because you can use it to describe so many things. Really, fundamentally, alchemy is turning something less desirable into something more desirable. So that moment in that session where I faced my fears, became it, and then turned it into something else, that's alchemy. That process is alchemy. And it's like, also to me, it means just kind of integrating darkness and bringing it into the light. Not that darkness necessarily is bad, but I think making the subconscious conscious is how, healing occurs and neural pathways are formed and things are repaired.
Yeah, I love that. I always say when the unconscious becomes conscious, enlightenment occurs. Mm-hmm. And you appreciate that. Yeah. What's the difference for you? Is there a difference between spirituality and religion?
I think this is kind of a big comment, but I think religion was created to enslave humanity, honestly. Spirituality is more, what is spirituality? I don't even really know how to define it. It's just like following your inner guidance.
Wow, that's perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what it is for me. Finding your inner guidance and authenticity. You know, I think that's the greatest minority in today's world is authenticity, to be honest. We've been enslaved by all these different labels and concepts and false personas. At least for me, when I had my awakening, I woke up from all that. It's kind of like blessed is the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Pure in heart means all those labels fell off for me, and I could see God in all things. We talked about the in Lakish, you know, you are I and I am you, the oneness. It brought me back to that oneness once I removed that illusion of separateness, which is all those labels and false personas that I was conditioned to have with unconscious living. Of course, trauma was a piece of it, my addiction and just unconscious ways of living. You know, and today I feel bad because sometimes people come up to me, hey, how's the Raiders? What about the Raiders this year? And like, okay, this is the first time in my life I don't even know who plays for who. You know, I was always hit with all that stuff. And now it's like, man, there's so much suffering in the world. It's hard for me not to look at that. It's like, we talked about this, but during the Super Bowl is the biggest sex trafficking event. Is that, am I right on that? Is that true? I mean, I heard Marianne Williamson bring that up in her book, A Politics of Love, and I was like shocked. Well, everyone's looking this way. Something's going on over here, in this other direction, and no one's even looking because they're too caught up in the commercials and $1 million commercials and all this stuff going on in Super Bowl. Did you ever hear about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen it. I mean, when the Super Bowl was in Atlanta, I met a girl who was trafficked. You know, she was at the restaurant where I was at, and I struck up a conversation with her, and somehow she told me how she was kind of lured out to Atlanta and ended up that she had to sleep with people for money in order to pay her way to be there, and it wasn't the situation she thought. So, yeah, I think it's definitely a big... it's used by traffickers as an opportunity for sure.
What are some other statistics that come to mind? I know in your book you brought up the 3 categories of traffickers. What's that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so that's the thing, because like the movie The Sound of Freedom is really an important message, and it sheds light on what's going on with children and internationally. And the book that I wrote and my story is kind of shedding light on what is happening in the United States. In the United States, the traffickers are 9 times out of 10 either a family member, an employer, or an intimate partner. And there's a psychological aspect that goes with that. You know, they're targeting a vulnerable individual, whether it be that they're emotionally, mentally vulnerable, or economically challenged. You gain their trust, and then you offer them a solution through becoming a commodity and sex work, or just drug them and force them into sexual slavery, which, you know, creates this desensitization that allows for continued exploitation through offering incentives for continuing to do sex work, like, you know, drugs, money, because now you have the addictions to both or all 3. And, you know, look at vulnerable populations like foster kids or young adults or kids that run away from home, like teenagers, right? 1 in 6 runaways are going to become a victim of human sex trafficking in the United States.
Thank you. And yeah, we were talking earlier, and I said I knew a number of people in the foster care system that went into the foster care system and they were all molested. And like, how does that even happen? What, you know, it's so hard to even adopt children or have foster children, yet these kids end up being molested, some of them, and touched and maybe trafficked.
Well, I think it's, you know, just a generational trauma that repeats itself. Like in my case, my biological mother was abused and then she trafficked me. My biological father was abused also. I mean, he kind of grew up in a poor home, and his mother was in active addiction and brought home a lot of different men who abused him in every way. And then he grew up to abuse his children. So it's a cycle that continues over and over again and preys on vulnerable populations because, I don't know, it's like if you don't have the means to take care of your well-being, you're vulnerable. And I'm not really educated enough to explain this like really cohesively, which is why I try to just stay, you know, in the area of what happened to me and my experience with freedom.
Problem. Yeah, thank you for answering that. I'm not educated as well, so on that department. So, you know, knowing this about your mother, did that help you have some kind of healing or some understanding? I always say understanding is love's other name. When I went through the 12 steps, I learned it to even start to question and have some kind of understanding of my deeper experiences that hurt me. Did that help you at all? Knowing what happened to her, help you have some kind of understanding to release that hate, maybe anger, whatever that was, resentment towards her?
Yeah, I think a combination of working a spiritual program as well as epiphanies helped me to be set free from any kind of blaming or hate and embrace forgiveness. So I did forgive her. And I also really came to the realization that, you know, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. That statement is so, so true. Even if you look at it from the standpoint of consciousness, if your brain waves are vibrating at a low rate that is allowing you to perceive at a baseline level of consciousness, you're not going to understand necessarily what you're doing, especially if you're in active addiction. You're thinking, when am I going to get my next drink? You're not thinking, what are the consequences of my actions and how am I being selfish and self-centered? You're just thinking about the carrot on the stick. But when you raise the rate of vibration of your brainwaves and you expand your consciousness, then you can see, oh, these people are running around on programs. They're programmed and they're conditioned by their traumas and what happened to them. And so that allowed me to have compassion for her. You know, how sad. She didn't have a chance for whatever reason, or didn't have the courage to make certain choices. And yeah, and it really can happen to anybody. You know, and in your neighbor's household, something could be going on that you don't know about. And look at signs like that. Like, where is this person's consciousness level? Because if you see a lot of dysfunction in a community, then there's likely abuse as well in that situation.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And I think that's one of the most beautiful teachings of Jesus. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, through his example. And that's so powerful. When you have that, you can develop that compassion, that level of compassion. But when you're trapped in those traumas, you know, when you're trapped in all that lower vibration, it's hard. It's hard to get out of that. And so, yeah, you're right. I really appreciate that. You eventually got sober and you found The 12 steps. Did you ever do the 12 steps? I know you talk about sobriety.
Mm-hmm. I did.
Was that helpful?
Yeah, it was helpful for me. At the time, I did Codependence Anonymous to start. And when I realized that had avoidant patterns, that was a huge light bulb moment. Like I was avoiding everything. And that was the root cause of 85% of my problems in life. So it was really helpful. And it allowed me to kind of curate a spiritual program for myself that I can grow and expand with for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's my experience too. So I appreciate that. Yeah, it helped me a lot to get started, but I've went elsewhere and expanded so much. But that was my starting point. And I truly appreciate it. Yeah, the 12 steps. A lot of times you'll hear people say in the 12-step community, self-knowledge avails us nothing, but I got knowledge. I mean, I love in your book, and you even put it in your book, and I just got it yesterday, late last night. And, the word gnosis, and a lot of times in the 12-step recovery, there's a chapter called We Agnostics. But if you remove the A, you could connect that with knowledge. And that's what I've gotten. Self-knowledge got me sober because I'm aware now. I'm aware of like my own fears, my own wrong perceptions and what created it, my own traumas, and I got to see how that fogged up my window of perception. And when I could see the nature of my suffering, the causes and conditions, then I could see, oh, so-and-so or so-and-so may be acting out that way, or that's why they're stuck in that particular state of being, because they're suffering from their own traumas, their own secrets, their own past experiences that's branded them emotionally to that level of consciousness that they can't get out of. And when I could even just question that, it helps me have more compassion, kind of like, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Yeah.
That's what I appreciate it. Your God concept, has that changed since you've been on this path from growing up? Because you brought up Christian.
Everything has changed, and that's been the biggest challenge for talking about these things publicly, because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But I'm not saying anybody is wrong. I'm just saying that my perspective has changed. So, this is what I believe to be true. This is what's true for me. And that is that, well, so much. I mean, just the nature of time and reality and the universe. And I don't know. I think I like to read up on the natural laws of the universe. And that helps explain a lot. I think, for instance, like as above, so below. It's also a Hermetic principle, and that is so true, because like I meditate and I do things like quantum healing hypnosis, and then in a vision or a revelation or my imagination or whatever you want to call it, I had an experience where I had the memory of a being that was creating me, but not me, humanity. And this being was like this divine being, like a feline, like a lion, and put part of himself into me or the human he was creating. I was connected to his memory because of what he put in me from himself. And it helped me to realize that my DNA stores information from that which I came from. So I got this idea that, okay, there's something inside me in my DNA that I am made up of. That's a reflection of something greater. And I saw where he went back to, wherever he was from, the galaxy or the planet. And it was so beautiful. And I got this idea that, okay, so this this cellular memory that's stored in my body is how I access information about what I'm creating in my life and my outer reality here on Earth. Because that's how I was designed. It's almost like, I am designed to be a vessel, through which something greater than me is creating heaven on earth, which I realize is already here, but I can't always see it because I don't always have the level of remembrance or consciousness to be able to perceive of it. So truly, as above, so below. It's in my DNA. And the more I can access it and plug it in and repair and heal, the more I see it in my outer reality.
I love that. And you got me thinking of the Sphinx when you mentioned that. Yeah. You're pretty familiar with the Anunnaki stories?
Yeah, I am. I was just reading on the Ascension Glossary before I hopped on the podcast just to give me a little reminder of, how important things are.
Yeah, just it's amazing, and these stories are kind of like repeated throughout cultures in ancient times. Even the ancient Hebrews weren't monotheistic in the beginning,
right?
So
it wasn't until Zoroastrianism came along.
Yeah, I think Akhenaten in Egypt was also was one of the first ones as well. Yeah. So it's just interesting. I'm all into that stuff. So. Yeah, I appreciate it. You mentioned another thing about thoughts, the power of thought earlier. I mean, how conscious are you now with the way you talk to yourself or express yourself with thoughts? Just being aware of your thoughts. I know that's been a difference maker for me. And, Joe Dispenza says, if our thoughts can make us sick, can our thoughts make us well? And then Bruce Lipton talks about the power of thought. We can create disease with negative beliefs and negative thinking, which can affect our gene expression. So are you pretty cautious with how you think today? I know I still have that voice in the head says you're a piece of shit, you're not good enough. And it still comes. I can't control it, right? But I can be more aware of it and see how it kind of continues to affect me in my daily life, the more I kind of be the observer. Has that helped you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely am more observant of my thoughts. I still get mad. I still have negative thoughts, but I kind of combine the affirmations and thought practice, conscious thought practice with like embodiment practices now. So if I have an emotion that feels like it's imbalanced or is causing me some sort of distress, then I try to identify it in my body and breathe into it. And then I kind of ask myself, okay, well, what is this part? How old is this part of me that is feeling this pain? And then I kind of like parent that part of me and love it and integrate it. So all the time I'm learning new ways to implement what I'm learning and grow. So the thought and embodiment practice, I think, is super helpful.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. That's called reparenting, kind of?
Yeah, it's like a mix between embodiment practice, which is just like emotional integration, and also like inner child healing. So, or like, some people do guided meditations, but I've actually been studying, this is really new, and I resisted it for a while when I learned about it because I thought, maybe this is evil. I don't know, because it was so new. But I've been studying the left-handed tantric path and that philosophy, which is like not what is good or what is bad, because actually that idea, that thought pattern might have stemmed from patriarchal view of reality and religion that wants to control. And so instead of what is good or bad, what is true? What is true for me? And So my view of like my emotions, like even negative emotions that I might have previously thought of as bad, are actually not anymore. It's just what is true for me in that moment. And from there, it's actually like a counterintuitive process that allows for an unfolding, an even greater unfolding, and appreciation of the full spectrum of human emotion and experience.
Well, I love that. Thank you. I'm always looking for new ways, new practices to incorporate into my life. So I appreciate that. I'll look more into that. And you talked about quantum healing. What did that look like for you?
So QHHT, that's like when you go into past lives. See, it's like a guided thing. And it was interesting. I think part of the time I thought, is this just my imagination? And maybe it is, or maybe it's not. I don't know. But it's still kind of practicing, exploring parts of your psyche and yourself. And I felt connected to my purpose after, I felt like it was helpful in exploring just different ideas and adding meaning.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you're familiar. Well, I'm sure you're familiar with Bill Wilson, but he worked with one of the youngins for several years, and it was Francis Wick. Francis G. Wick was the psychologist, and on your inner child, your inner world, of your inner child, and I think Bill was doing some child working on some childhood trauma and doing some work on himself. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know that about Bill Wilson.
Yeah, he had a lot of childhood trauma which I'm writing a book about. I was telling you about, and just got to continue to write that stuff. And it's encouraging to hear you wrote a book and look at your book, and I just try to get more ideas and to express myself and motivation. So thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time and your experience. And like Gandhi says, my life is my message, and you definitely have a strong message. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll end it with the Thich Nhat Hanh quote. And he says that the greatest gift as a parent you can give your children is your own happiness. And I see that you're giving your children a beautiful gift. So thank you.
Thank you.